Hi everyone, welcome to Mark's 900. I'm Mark. Today we're going to do a top charts because I know people like them, and so I'm going to shamelessly steal the stylings of Yummy Noob, except that I'll be using the Queen's English rather than making y'all listen to a Texan interpretation of it. The first list is going to be the top 7 things I've learned about motorcycles in the past 2 years. Obviously I've learned a lot, but these are the most interesting and are suited to newer prospective riders, returning bikers, and maybe the old sweats might even learn a thing or two. So let's crack on with our list then, and it's in no particular order, so I'll just start at number 1. Now, number 1 is that people just don't give a damn that you ride a bike. Not family or friends, like literally the only people who care actually ride bikes themselves, and they just want to tell you about theirs. Okay, so you might get the odd comment from a normal about how dangerous it is or how they knew a guy who died on a motorbike. Well, great, thanks for that. Look, every weekday morning I walk into an office of about 80 people and I'm dressed like a Power Ranger, but no one acknowledges it, except for that time I removed my over trousers and realised that I'd forgotten my actual trousers underneath. Anyway, the point is that you need to ride for you and no one else. It won't help you climb the corporate ladder, make you windswept and interesting, or attract potential new partners. Not that I'm really into that, but I'm not exactly beating them off with a shitty stick either. So all I'm saying is that people don't care that you have a bike, or indeed what type of bike it is. Number 2, don't be scared of bigger bikes. I know it sounds limp, but it seems to be ingrained in us. There's a lot of hype about liter bikes and how you shouldn't buy one because you don't have the skills, etc. And you might not be able to handle it. Well, I think it's a load of old cock. This may sound like stupid advice, but hear me out. Small bikes are harder to see and even struggle to keep up with the flow of traffic, which is really dangerous. Also, small bikes tend to be budget, so you don't get all the electronic stability and control, but you still go fast enough to kill yourself several times over. The higher the CC, generally the more traction control, ABS, wheelie control, lean control and rider modes you have at hand to help you out in a sticky situation. As an inexperienced rider, I'm going to hope that you're not going fast enough or mad enough to actually need any of it, but it's nice to have, right? And that brings me to the second point. You need to have a level head and to be sensible. If you're a 19-year-old squid, whatever that is, don't get a Gixxer 1000, man. But if you're a 52-year-old bank manager who enjoys a steady existence, then why not buy that big bike? You can probably afford it. And if you're worried about having a powerful bike, then ironically, you're probably in the right mindset to have one. Biking is like many sports with this whole elitist thing going on where experienced ones will advise you to buy a beginner's bike. Sure enough, they will be lighter and a lot cheaper in every respect, and that's worthy of consideration. You also need to think about whether you are actually going to use all the power of a Fireblade or an R1. Probably not. So is it worth getting one anyway? Well, hell yes, but I can't stress enough, only if you've got a level head. It's about the rider, it's not about the bike. The reason I'm saying all this is because I have to admit that I was a little bit scared when I came back into biking, and so I very cautiously bought a 125 to start off with. Well, I sold it 3 months later because I was completely bored of it, and then I went up to a 500cc. And then after 6 months I sold that as well, and then I bought a 900, and I've been chuffed to bits ever since. Now, I nearly bought a 750 as an interim bike, but I'm just so thankful that I didn't. So the moral of this story is, if you want to get a bigger bike, get one. It might not be the right answer, but not because it's too powerful or too scary. Number 3, and this is kind of tied to the last point, bikes go fast, like really fast. Even a 125 will leave many cars standing at the lights. A 500 on an A2 restricted engine will have the performance of a Golf GTI, or whatever the hot hatch is at the moment. Anything above an unrestricted 600 will smoke all but the most expensive cars off the line. Mine, for example, does 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. You've got to spend a whole load of wonga to match that with a car. But also, they stop really quick too. So if you see a bike accelerating rapidly and think it looks dangerous, just remember they can stop that fast too. It's awesome, and it's what makes a bike so much fun. It's not really about the top end speed, which hopefully you won't see on the road, but the way it takes off and it stops. The downside is that when things go wrong, that also happens very quickly too. So just be warned, you need to get used to the pace, and that is why I guess people say to start off on a beginner's bike. But honestly, you do get used to that rapid pace in a matter of hours, and then smaller bikes and cars will never see the same again. Unless of course you drive a Lamborghini with twin turbos. In at number 4, things that didn't used to be interesting suddenly are. Here's a few examples. I've had a push bike for years, right, and probably oiled the chain only a handful of times, and it's just fine. But now I'm a complete chain oiling simp, and not just about the action of doing it, but also which oil to use. Hell, I did a whole video on it. Then there are tyres. Again, I've never given a toss about them on cars, just bang on the cheapest set. Now I read pages and pages about the different types and compounds out there. It's really important to me and might actually save my life, which makes it very interesting. And again, I did a whole video on it. Then there's cornering, and will I ever master it? I used to go around corners very quickly in the car, I never really thought much about it. Now it's all I think about. Okay, not all I think about, but it gets way too much head time. Anyway, me and my mate were out riding the other day and had a really long conversation about how we didn't know the limits of our bikes in the wet, or the dry for that matter. And the only real way to find out is to push it till you fall off, and then wind it back one, and that's simply not going to happen. I'm not sure I will ever solve this one, but one thing is for sure, I'm never going to stop trying. The last thing I do is spend hours and hours watching YouTube videos on motorcycle restoration and how to ride properly. I really am a bore, and I actually understand what a cross-plane crank is now, whereas 2 years ago I thought a crank was some kind of starting handle and a cross-plane was an angry aircraft. Fortunately, I'm not yet at the point where I talk about road numbers and how I got somewhere. That's from my dad's generation because we've got sat-nav. The point is, you will become a bit of a bore, unless of course you're talking to other riders. Number 5 is that you never ever stop buying mods and things for your bike. Honestly, it's like an addiction, and you have to be really careful not to go wild with this one, or you could turn your bike into a monster, and not a good one like a Ducati, but an ugly one like Shrek. We've all laughed at those boy racer cars that look like they've crashed through the window at Halfords, but somehow the same type of things are mostly acceptable on bikes. Slip-ons, mirrors, levers, tail tidies, fender extenders, huggers, oilers, screen angels, and so on. It never stops and is great. And one good thing to fall out of this is that your relatives have a whole new set of bike-related presents that they can buy you for Christmas. At least I think that's a good thing, but it kind of depends on what they buy you. At number 6 then, our penultimate item. Motorcycling is expensive. Just to get started on a 125, you need to have spent about £3,500, which includes a decent bike, clothing, insurance, mods, and that's not including your test and lessons. As you go up the CC, they just keep on getting more expensive, and certainly my 900cc only does 50 miles to the gallon, which is worse than many cars. Not only that, it gets through tyres really quickly, which aren't cheap, and it costs a fair bit to insure it. If you drop down to a 125, then sure, they will do over 100 miles to the gallon and be cheap to insure. But think about it, you would have to ride a 125 around for about 30 years before it actually paid for itself. Think of it as more of an expensive hobby, which it is. I mean, when did you last go out for a drive in your car for no reason? No, never. And yet, I bet you'll do it all the time on your bike. And finally, at number 7, unless they're a biker themselves, your other half is bound to get jealous. You see, you're out having a really good time on your bike and you come back with a massive cheesy grin on your face. They know you've been behaving yourself and they don't mind, but they want a piece of it. How can I get a license? I like those red ones. I'd look good on that wearing leather. And all you can think is, please don't do this. It's going to spoil the whole dynamic of my group and you will take me away from them. Even though I love you very much, this is my thing. Having said that, I've seen a few cases of other halves getting their license and then they buy a bike and it's like box ticked, job done, so the bike never leaves the garage. So you've got a choice. Either put them off or risk bluffing it and hope they lose interest. Either way, you don't want to do what my mate at work did. He told his other half that his bike is called Kylie and then repeatedly joked that he was off out to ride Kylie. That will not help you at all. Well, that's about it, everyone. Please like and subscribe. Then maybe one day, if I'm getting enough hits, Kawasaki will lend me an H2. And if this vid gets me to 1 million subscribers like Yummy Noob, then I'll just buy one. So take it easy, keep those chains oiled, and I'll see you soon.